God, sorry. I was just busy reading reviews on colbyplus.com.
Heck yes, Colby Plus. I'm still wearing my 3-2, but the water is getting warmer here in San Diego. And so, it might be time for something. But you know what? The other thing is, though, at my age, I wear a 3-2 when the water's like 68 degrees. I'm
Well, the
okay
three,
with a 3-2. They're so maneuverable these days. The Colby Plus, they're super stretchy. So
that's
I'd
what I
rather
was
be
going to
warm.
say. Yeah, that's what I was going to say is it's comfortable now. It's not like it's inhibitive. Yeah, I'm used to it as well. Joel A on Colby Plus on the 3-2 that you're talking about said, best wetsuit I've ever had. I've been surfing a long time, over 50 years. I've gone through countless wetsuits in that time. The Colby is not only really comfortable to wear, it is warm and the most long-lasting wetsuit that I've ever owned. I surf almost every day and usually go through two 3-2s and then two 4-3s in the winter. The Colby I have has lasted longer than a season without leaking. Also, I can get out of the front zips the first time I wear it without needing any help to get it off. Overall, the most perfect wetsuit I've had. Boom.
Yeah, well, that's a great review. And in addition, as we head into sort of the summer travel season, Colby Plus has this great wet dry bag with that super deluxe zipper locking system. I forget the name of it. There's some proprietary name, but it's just intense. And what a great travel bag.
Yeah, tie zip, I think is. It's like this German zipper, but it creates a completely airtight lock. So the bag obviously doesn't get water in it, but it actually doesn't even get air in it. Like you can zip it up and it's full of air, and you could use it as a flotation device if you needed to. So incredibly high quality equipment. Go to colbyplus.com to learn more. And then, of course, realwatersports.com is just with us always. Retail partner, the greatest.
Yeah, realwatersports.com. Again, as we head into what seems to be North American sort of summer surf travel season. What a great resource for everything that you need. You need a new leash, boom. You need some wax, boom. You need a new surfboard, boom. You need some fins, fins. I mean, there's some fins out there. Of course, NVS and others are Friends Futures, and you can get everything um, at Colby, or excuse me, at Real Water Sports for your surf travel needs.
Yeah, and board bags, board shorts, literally everything that you need for any water sports. So realwatersports.com.
As we see some movement at the takeoff zone, it's Kelly Slater grabbing rail.
Yeah, guy, David. It's Spit. It's the Spit podcast. We are talking all things surf here, and it's May 7th. Holy mackerel. May 7th, 2025. Time seems to be flying by, and it is. And David, we've got quite a show today. First, let me say good morning to you, my friend.
Good morning to you, Scott. And I, right at the top of the show, because we so often forget, I want to remind people that we have a Patreon. And some of the best stuff ends up on Patreon. In fact, later today, we're going to have Jamie Tierney, producer of How Surfers Get Paid, the incredible Stab ongoing series, is going to join us on Patreon to discuss that whole series, his relationship with Stab, and of course, the Laird Hamilton episode that just dropped.
Unreal. Good stuff. I've got a follow up to our show last week. I got an email from Rusty Preisendorfer, our good friend, and he said, Scott, I've been enjoying your podcast with David Scales. FYI, I was listening to the one on Peter Townend. Remember, David, you and I spoke regarding Tony Roberts' discussion with PT. And and Rusty goes on to say, I'm sure you and David are aware, PT and I have been close friends since the World Contest in 72 in Ocean Beach in San Diego. Lots of history. And when he was the ad director at Surfing Magazine, he sold me my first ad. Soon after, he became the marketing director of Rusty, and we built the brand, which peaked in 95, briefly bypassing Billabong in global sales and breathing down Quicksilver's neck. So Rusty bringing up some good insights about PT and his power, which we sort of spoke about. Like there's like a people don't realize how PT is a smart cookie. And Rusty goes on to say, can't wait for this year's boardroom show. It's a great event, Scott. Rusty. So cool little email note there from Rusty about PT and how powerful PT is in the surf culture.
50 years of friendship. How
Yeah.
crazy is that? What's your longest term friendship?
Wow. Right now, I mean, probably 40, 45 years, that I know that I still run into people. I mean, I live where I grew up, so it's kind of easy
Yeah.
to see people that you've known since junior high school. But
Yeah.
there's guys since junior high, since seventh grade, that I still see. In
Are
fact,
they?
I was surfing yesterday randomly. I was surfing at the Del Mar Beach break, and I ran into an old friend, Ricky Lash, who, by the way, was the manager and owner of Rusty Surfboards, Rusty Del Mar, and Rusty Del Mar. And I might get some of that wrong. I'm not absolutely positive, but I believe he was like a co-owner of Rusty Del Mar at some point. I know he was a manager, and it's my assumption that he had some sort of ownership stake in that. But Ricky and I have gone back, we go back to, for sure, me being in ninth grade, which I think Rick would have been in seventh or eighth grade in the Del Mar area. And Ricky is a red hot surfer. Rick Lash, super good surf. Still, and today, like yesterday, he was ripping. I was like, wow, this he's always inspiring me, and he was ripping. And yeah, so there
That's
are
great.
guys out there.
I love to hear that. And it seems like you can't really live in San Diego for very long without having some connection to Rusty in one way or the other, whether you surf the boards or work for or just spend time with. But I love to hear that too about Rusty and PT being friends for that long. Um, I have friends that like the great thing about long-term friendship is not only do you go through a bunch of things together, story arc, big life changes, but um, like friends that I have from when I was really young, I probably wouldn't pick as my friends today. Like our we're so different. Our lives have diverged so much, but that's great because if I just pick friends because of my personality and my worldview today, I would live in a little echo chamber of things that are just similar to me and my own interests and likes. But having friends with a history who now see the world differently and I respect their views because of our history, it kind of creates a really interesting dynamic. So I'm all for long-term friendships. Keep them around, invest
Yeah,
in them.
yeah, for sure, for sure.
So love to hear that.
Good stuff.
Um, Real quickly before we get into the bulk of the show, because we do have huge updates in surfing this last week, but let's just remind people that we're going to Chicama, Peru. Um, Last I heard, there was one or two rooms left for people to join us on this. We're taking Scott and I are doing a listener trip. We're taking over the resort right there on the hillside overlooking the surf break. I think there's about 20 rooms. So we're taking over. It'll all be our listeners. We'll be there for a week. It's going to be August 27th through September 3rd. And we're really, really looking forward to it. So if you want to join us on that, Waterways Travel is the one who's putting it together. They are incredibly helpful with these trips. They are your kind of they're a first world-class surf concierge for anywhere that you want to go in the world, but they really do all of the lifting on this. Scott and I have a social obligation on the trip, but that's really it. They handle everything else. And so if you want to participate, join us, hang out with listeners, surf your brains out because from what I understand, I've never been there, but from what I understand, it's kind of conditions are favorable all day and it breaks even on small swells. So there's plenty of waves to go around for everybody, and we'll just
Yeah.
have at it for a full week.
I know. I'm very excited. It's sort of a bucket list surf spot, Chicama, the I guess one of the, or if not the longest left in the world. So pretty excited about that. And randomly, I was surfing Swamis the other day and ran into one of our friends who was on our El Salvador trip with Waterways. And he told me, Scott, I've just signed up for the Chicama trip. So he's going to join us again. And I'm looking forward to that.
Who
And I'm
who was
having
it?
an old man moment. I'm forgetting his
Greg.
name.
Was it Greg?
No, is
I'm
Greg
trying to.
going?
No, I don't know. I'm just thinking
Well,
of guys who live in that area.
it's my
Brian.
friend who lives in Cardiff, and he's really well. Is it Brian?
Yeah,
No.
Brian. Brian, the one who was hand planing and
Yes, Brian.
yeah. Okay, sweet.
Brian's going with us. So
Yeah,
yeah, super stoked. And I apologize
amazing.
for not remembering his name, but
No,
yeah.
I love Brian. I'm glad he's coming. Yeah, he was
Yeah.
on a whole different program uh, in El Salvador, riding like soft top with just little side bite fins and side slipping down the face. anytime he was in position for a wave and I was in front of him, he's just like, go, go, go. I was like, sweet, dude, thanks.
Yeah, lots of really, just aspirational stuff, with Brian. Like, I'm like, God, that guy's kind of got it going on. I had great insight, conversations with him that he provided about food and
Yeah,
his
that's right.
intake and his health. Like, he's really inspirational in that regard. Like, he's he's kind of lives a pretty focused life regarding his health and his
But
lifestyle in general.
also doesn't bash you over the head with it at all. Like I had to get all that out of him. And instead it was him asking me questions about like my stuff, you know? And then like I finally kind of tuned in that like, oh no, he's way more sophisticated in the way that he's operating than I am. I should probably be asking him the questions instead. So glad that
Yeah,
he's
it's
coming.
funny. Yeah, I had, I saw Brian, I could tell this guy eats really well, and I had prepared all of this kale bragging that I was going to spill upon him, about how much kale I take in, but he's not, like you say, he doesn't bash you over the head. By the way, David, I'm drinking a kale smoothie right now.
Are you really?
No, just kidding.
I'm I'm drinking perhaps even more potent than the kale smoothie, my AG1 right here.
Heck yeah, AG1. I love my AG1. My green drink is crucial to my day.
drinkag1.com/surf. All right, good. Well, glad I'm spending another week with Brian. Brian, thanks. Can't wait.
I've got some news about the tariff situation, which has been sort of infiltrating everything about the economy throughout the United States and the world, but specific to us, the surf industry. Um, on the FCS Fins website, they put up a note that says, "We are taking a short break from sales while we review the impact of the new import tariffs." And this is sort of reverberated a little bit through the surfboard building community. And I don't know, what is your take on this? My sense is, before you answer, I'll tell you that my take is, you know what, that makes sense. Like, nobody knows what's going on. Like, how can you move forward in an aggressive manner and plan for the year if you're just like, we got to wait until they tell us what's up? And so I get it.
So to fully understand, I guess they're taking a break from sales so that they can maintain a certain amount of inventory that they paid for pre-tariff before they decide like we don't want to sell through all of our inventory and then have to buy at a higher price and then have to charge at a higher price if the Trump administration then takes tariffs away down the road a month from now, because he does that. He changes his mind pretty quickly. So FCS doesn't want to present to their customers as kind of changing pricing all the time. Is that kind of the strategy here?
I don't know. Unfortunately,
Okay.
didn't do any research with
Okay.
FCS, but I spoke to some people some board builders that basically, said, look, everybody's kind of wondering what's up. And certainly, I mean, there are just so many facets of the board building process that involve product from China, and it might not necessarily be what you think it is. It could be the chemicals for foam, or it could be a certain weave of the fabric that's required in some of the fiberglass cloth. So there's a lot going on there, and it does make sense to just raise your hand and go, please give us some guidance, give us some insight so we can move forward with our business. Is that too much to ask?
Yeah. Well, it's the reason why I suggested maybe it is what I said was because it's odd that they'd be pausing sales. It'd be one thing if they said, we're going to pause production because that comes from China, but we'll still try to make money while we can. But the idea of pausing sales makes me think it's probably a matter of trying not to have their end pricing fluctuate too much for the consumer. You know, they don't want to have to raise prices this month and then next month drop prices again and play that game. Um, but I mean, from my perspective, what the Trump administration kind of they've operated with a certain level of chaos and volatility. And so, yeah, it would be very difficult to be a small business owner right now who was reliant on importing product um, because you don't know what's going to change next month, you know?
Yeah, and that's kind of what you hear out in the space too, is that, look, the big players, the Apples and the other large corporations are going to be able to absorb this. It's the small businesses that just are going to, if they don't provide some sort of consistency, the small businesses are just going to get wiped out, from small trucking companies all the way down the line and into the surf industry as well. Like there's just so many. In fact, I spoke to somebody yesterday. I did reach out a little bit, and a prominent board builder told me that, look, they're busy. They've got custom orders coming in and they've got new orders. Their new order rack is full. But at the same time, some of their net 30s, some of their net 45, some of their invoices are still outstanding.
Yeah.
I don't know if that speaks to the tariff so much as the winter time. I don't know, but they did say that there's some product, and I won't get into what product that is, that they rely on, that comes from Canada, that all the other large corporations that also rely on that product from Canada are now sourcing out of America because you can't get it from Canada. And that's having some reverberation. So there's all sorts of little reverberations that you might not necessarily think about, but that are affecting what's happening, not only in our surfboard industry, but in industries around the United States.
Well, despite those things, there's still American manufacturers using American raw materials in the surfboard
Right.
industry.
Yes.
And you're right, like there are certain elements of it, maybe fin boxes, certain things that are difficult to source domestically, but there are domestic fin manufacturers. There's domestic foam suppliers with domestic chemical suppliers. There's every aspect of it, I think. So be conscientious if you do want to support local and invest in the U.S. industry. There's ways to do it.
I just sense that, if there's U.S. manufacturers that are like, oh, wow, insane, we're getting tons of orders because people want to invest in the USA, we're going to ramp up our production. And then they ramp up production, and then, oh, Trump administration says, guess what? We're pulling back tariffs. You can now get your product overseas at a much more reasonable rate. And that poor company that is here in America that decided to ramp up. Anyway, I don't want to get too into the politics of it, but all I think everyone's asking is just for some clarity.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we won't have that for a period of time, but we'll work through it.
Hey, David, what do you got next for me?
Huge WSL updates since last week. Huge.
Okay, let's begin.
The WSL has announced major changes to the structure and format of the tour in 2026. This includes the elimination of the finals day format. This also includes the elimination of the cut, and almost most importantly, the return of Pipeline as the season ender. So the entire schedule has kind of been rejiggered. It's going to start at Bells Beach in April. It is going to end at Pipeline in December. And in addition, those are the kind of the top level important details, major seismic shifts. But in addition, they're actually doing, 12 events. 9 events are going to be the main season. And then the season has a reduced field for events 10 and 11, fewer surfers based on rankings. And then for the final event at Pipe, all the surfers return and Pipe gets weighted at 150%. So rather than the winning surfer earning 10,000 points, the winning surfer will win 15,000 points in that scenario. And like I said, elimination of the final 5 format. So this means that the champion will be crowned on cumulative points throughout the season. So basically what this is doing is making it obviously a more even winner at the end of the year because it's cumulative points. But by weighting Pipe more heavily, it's like having a Masters event, basically, which is something that you and I have asked. I mean, all of these things are things that you and I have been asking for.
And it seemed, I'm sorry, go ahead.
But yeah, the idea of, I think it's a very, very smart move to have the Masters thing. We will, again, you kind of have to roll these things out and see how they play out in reality to really have a good understanding for what the shortcomings are of the design. But this is a much better design that I think puts the emphasis on quality surf and quality surfing.
the pipeline being weighted sort of obviously speaks to, hey, we don't want to be able to crown a champion before pipe. How do we best do
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
And that is, well, let's make sure that perhaps the number 20th guy on the tour could win pipe and win the thing if he's close enough, obviously, in points leading up to that.
Yeah.
But the reduced field for events 10 and 11 right before pipe, explain to me what your thoughts are there. What does that do for all of what we're speaking about regarding the weighted event on the finals?
Well, I don't know exactly how to answer the question the way that you phrased it, but I think when I just read that, I
It's just a
thought,
shitty question. That's what it was, which I'm known
well,
for.
well, no, not necessarily, because you probably have a reason you're asking it. But what my thought when I first read it was, we are always asking for fewer surfers on tour. We got that with the post cut. Like after the cut, you have fewer surfers, and that kind of makes it a more dynamic event because there's better quality surfers and they could run in a shorter period, meaning one swell window. I feel like this is an attempt to work towards that end goal. So they're going to see how this plays out now by just getting two events with fewer surfers. But next season or the 2027 season, I wouldn't be surprised if there's then four events that have fewer surfers in it, and they just kind of work towards that ultimate end goal if it all works out well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll ask Dave. I'm interviewing Dave Prodan from the WSL tomorrow, so we'll see. But the reduced field for events 10 and 11, and then you bring everyone back. That's very interesting.
Well,
And
I think it is interesting to have everybody at pipe. Like, I like the idea of everybody at pipe, but I also like the idea of those who have surfed great throughout the season work their way into priority position and don't have to deal with the riffraff necessarily. And the reason why, just to reiterate things that we've said over the years, in this, the way that the structure is set up, there's so many variables at play any given day. And throughout the course of the season, because you have to surf so many heats, you're ultimately going to be subject to negative consequences of those variables. So you could have the best surfer in the world on a given year, they're still going to lose heats throughout the course of the year. So I think by making it fewer surfers on tour, you're eliminating a handful of variables. And I understand why they have the bulk of the surfers that they have, but it does just leave a lot to chance. So by putting fewer surfers towards the pointy end of the season, I think eliminates some of the negative consequence of the variables and gives the best surfers, the cream that has risen to the top, a better chance to showcase those skills. The problem with the current format is those two events, 10 and 11, are the wave pool and paniche, which are just, if the cream rose to the top, that's not where the cream is going to perform at their best. You want them in the best waves. So that kind of sucks, but whatever.
that's interesting. The wave pool in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, the wave pool in Abu Dhabi is event 10 and Paniche, Portugal is event 11. Those are events that I feel like even the bottom rung surfers can perform really, really well at potentially.
But they're getting eliminated. They're getting a reduced field for those.
Yeah.
So then the bigger question is why bring them back to pipe? And I guess the answer is because frankly, pipe is a bit of an equalizer. In other words, number 30 could win pipe, maybe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the only reason you would bring them back is to give those guys a chance to raise the Pipeline Masters trophy. That's the only reason you would bring them back.
There's also an element in surfing that is we want to see the underdog perform. And you're right, that's an event that somebody can get a 10-point ride at and really, really elevate their status. So give the opportunity for those heroic stories to happen. It's not as
Uh,
exciting if, like, look, Imai Kalani Devault, 32nd position, Ramsey Bukaim, 30th position. Those guys are guys who can get tens at pipe, you
right.
know? And really create a storyline that services the WSL's end goals. If Imai Kalani Devault has a run at Surf Abu Dhabi or Portugal, who gives it? I mean, it's not really that exciting. Good for him, but it
Well, it
doesn't
actually
become,
makes it more exciting if that's the case. I mean, he's at pipe. All of a sudden, he moves from 28th to 20th, and now he's at pipe in 20th position instead of 28th position, and he's a Hawaiian pipeline expert.
yeah.
I don't know. I just
So
don't. I guess I'll get more insight about this tomorrow, but I don't understand why you would bring people back. I want less people at pipe so that we can run in super killer waves. We're going to,
Okay. Well,
I don't know. I
get
just,
the answer tomorrow. I'd be
yeah.
curious to hear what their thoughts were. The other great thing, or the other just detail here, is that of the 12 total events, your 9 scores count, or your 9 best performances count. You get to throw away 3 events. So traditionally, they were throwing away 2 scores. This time, they're throwing away 3. So that's worth noting. I also will state I love the idea of starting at bells.
Let me back up. How many surfers for the men? How many surfers for the women throughout at the beginning?
Same. 32 for
One,
the men, and I think
32.
17 for the women.
Oh, I thought for some reason I thought they were going to equalize the amount of women on tour. Okay. So
I
30. Yeah.
check with Dave.
I
That's
will.
I think that because I didn't read anything about. You're right. There was a headline months ago about
Yeah.
adjusted numbers moving forward, but I did
Yeah.
not see that mentioned in this press release or article.
To answer your question, bells being the first, I think that is good, because you can kind of kick off with this pomp and circumstance, which
Hmm.
is the ringing of the bell, this historic, some have suggested, and it's probably true, the longest running professional surf contest in the history of the world. I'm not here to argue that one way or the other. I don't know the answer, but I imagine it might be. And yeah, so I like bells as a kickoff, usually the first event of the year, you're excited about it no matter what, even if it's somewhere not so great. So yeah, I'm excited about that.
I
Bells is a good idea. Go ahead.
We've stated in the past that just bells can be kind of boring. It's been reinvented a little bit this year with Ethan Ewing's style of surfing on the bowl, but I agree for the same reasons as you. If we're going to have bells on tour, I like the idea of kicking off there. It's a historic event, and um, I also feel like that 3 leg kind of Australian season is just a general great place to start. So maybe I'd make an argument that Snapper would be a better start or whatever, but I'm okay with Bells being a start. Bells, Margaret, Snapper is the first 3 events. Then it goes Punta Roca 4, Sakarema 5th, J Bay, Chopu, Cloudbreak, Lowers. Phenomenal run sequence there. I mean, J Bay, Chopu, Cloudbreak, those could be Masters events right there, Masters points. Lowers, glad to see Lowers back on the season, to be perfectly honest, not as a finals event.
Well, a couple things. Could we make the 3 events in Australia some sort of triple crown type of situation, like the Kangaroo Cup or whatever, the Koala Cup or something corny like that, where the winner in points after those 3 events gets some sort of, bonsoy lifetime lifetime supply of, or who knows? I don't know. Just a
Are you,
thought.
well, hate to break this to you, Scott, but they already have that. It's called the treble, and they win a car.
Oh, you're kidding. I had no idea. Is that on me or is that on their lack of marketing?
Oh, it's marketed heavily in every day
You're
of the
kidding.
broadcast in
I have
Australia.
never
Yes.
ever seen. Well, good for them. I'm glad that they finally caught on.
Well, you guys are on the same page, Scott. It is the Aussie treble, and I should do them justice because they are giving away a car. So let
I
me
had
look
no
up.
idea. I'm embarrassed a
Man,
little bit. I'm a little embarrassed, I guess.
I was so excited to hear you delivering that speech. I thought you were making a joke,
I've
actually.
got a great idea.
So the GWM Aussie treble schedule, GWM, yeah. I mean,
I mean, I watch these events. I must just turn off the volume or something.
yeah.
I watch them on YouTube. Is that the issue?
I'm not sure, but they're
Maybe.
running commercials for it. Let me see. I'm trying to figure out what kind of car they're giving away because obviously the ads didn't work well enough if I don't remember the car.
Oh,
It's a GWM. I guess that's the name. They're driving away a GWM Tank 300 is the vehicle.
a
Um,
tank 300.
I don't know. It's an Aussie vehicle, so I'm unfamiliar with it. But there you go. The Aussie treble. You guys are on the same page. Great Wall Motors SUV. That's GWM is Great Wall Motors. Um,
I am impressed with Ryan Crosby. Who's the hero here? Is Ryan Crosby the hero, or is Ryan Crosby just somebody who read the tea leaves like we've all been reading them forever? And he just was like, this is obvious. Why aren't we doing this? Or did
so
he, what are your thoughts on Ryan Crosby in this? Is he the hero or is he just doing his job and it was quite obvious?
so I'm gonna go with the answer is both, but I'm leaning towards hero because Stab Magazine, Sam McIntosh from Stab Magazine interviewed Ryan, and asked him, I thought, very hard-hitting questions, including, you know, is John John now coming back? Like with the presumption that John John left because you guys were not catering to the surfers. And but the way that Ryan answered every question was a complete deflection of his own lording over and making great decisions as a CEO.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it was the exact opposite. He said, I'm just reading the room. Like I realized that there was a need to reinvest in the core of surfing. And actually, I'll read a quote. He says, my philosophy is that you grow audiences by deepening fandom, not by watering things down. So we're doubling down on the core fans, putting surfers front and center, making sure the message reflects what the diehards love. The sport will grow organically, no need to force it. So he is reading every message board, every YouTube comment from every event that they've been running this past year, perhaps listening to what you and I have been saying for 5 or 6 years now, and giving the core fans what they want. But I thought more importantly than that even was woven into all of his answers was a desire to foster trust with the athletes. So he said, we're talking to the athletes. We've set up this, I forget what he called it, but it was, you know, a not a union, not a surfers union, but something like that, where the surfers can be heard constantly and there's an open dialogue of exchange between us and them because we want to invest in the surfers themselves. So we sent out a survey. Do you want to get rid of the top five? Whatever. So the idea of fostering trust with the athletes, I think highlights what maybe you and I haven't been saying directly for the ELO era, which is the erosion of trust with the athletes and the reason why the Stephanie Gilmores are opting out of competing when she's the current champ. John Florence opting out of competing when he's the current world champ. And I think with a long enough timeline, when we look back at history, that's what we will see from the ELO era was decisions being made kind of for corporate best interests to grow the fan base wide but not deep, and an erosion of the trust from the actual surfers themselves.
Well, it certainly is great news. Everyone's excited. I think everyone feels reinvigorated. Of course, there is, as you mentioned, a wait and see period here, but looking forward to the 2026 season, and looking forward to see who gets this new tank vehicle.
You just wanted to give them a Bonsoy like coffee drink or something.
A lifetime supply of Bonsoy, whatever it is. Who knew it was a tank by GWM, but good for them. You know what I'm saying?
So do you feel happy, presumably, about these WSL updates?
Absolutely. Obviously, I have some concerns about, you and I think are on the same page. I want less surfers, and only because it puts really good surfers in really good waves. Now I don't mind, that there's round one with 32 guys in it or whatever. I'm not necessarily going to watch that. But what usually happens is they wait for a good swell. The good swell happens in round one. And by the time we get to the pointy end of the stick, we're sometimes left with really not the best waves of the waiting period. And an ideal situation is the contests would start in shitty surf. No one wants that, but less than ideal surf. And it gets to a point where the swell hits and we've got the final 8 people in the water. And,
Well, to
it actually
clarify,
brings us to I don't know if you want to switch gears, but I did get an email, and you did too, from a loyal listener, Paul from the UK, about competitive surfing and the debate that we've been having.
to clarify for listener maybe who doesn't know, we need more than one swell to run an event currently because of the number of surfers on tour. So you're talking about start in a building swell and have the final at the end of the swell or at the peak of the swell, of course, would be ideal. The way it's currently going is you need probably more
2
than
swells.
maybe even more than 2 or different directions and stuff. So depending on where you are at the world, but um, yeah, I agree. The fewer surfers is a great idea, but the fact that they're at least putting better waves on tour this year, I think is a major step in the right direction. Having Cloudbreak back, that sequence, like I said, J-Bay, Chopu, Cloudbreak, Lowers is a great sequence of distinctly different styles of waves, equal lefts, equal rights. We're having more lefts on tour now, which is a great thing. So I think it's a great
Yeah.
step in the right direction. Fewer surfers will come, I believe, but I was psyched
Ryan,
on the news.
Ryan Crosby was obviously put his head down and just was like, because you didn't, I mean, for the last 4 months or whatever, you didn't really hear from the WSL. You didn't hear from any leadership there. And it's because he was probably working this out. I mean, to get the right permits pulled and everything, to navigate, especially with Hawaii and the politics and the power players there, it's more difficult than people realize. And, he kudos to him so far. Tip of the cap, right?
I agree. Huge fan. And also like quietly do the work and then there's work to show for it rather than showing up in a sequins jacket and making all these bold making all these bold proclamations and then not listening to anybody and we're like, well, what's been done, you know?
Oh my God. Well, Paul from the UK sent us, and I'm going to boil this down. He sent us a nice, long, insightful email, but his thoughts are, look, if we're talking about competitive surfing, the current model is not too far from representing the real surfing experience. David, you and I, we surf all the time. We often hope for classic conditions, memorable sessions, but the reality is these moments are rare. In a way, this is good. If we always had incredible surf conditions each session, they would lose their allure and power and magic. And I might say, David, a la the wave pool. And if competitions were always held in spectacular ways, we wouldn't be as excited as we currently are when Piper Chopu or Jay Bay are having their special moment on finals day. As surfers, we are all in a heightened state for these swells. For these moments, whether surfing or even viewing high stakes finals and pumping surf, the concept that it's on in these moments and that buzz and that pull is surely the central emotional part of being a surfer. The waves are the stars, David, but should we celebrate and promote the natural variety of conditions and how this actually enhances the surfing experiences and raises it above other sports which have a more standardized playing field? Again, that comes from loyal listener Paul from the UK. David, your thoughts. Should normal nominal conditions be a part of it? Because without that, we would lose the specialness that is those moments when a really great swell arrives.
Heck no. I totally understand and agree. I've experienced what he's talking about. Like, you know, when you watch, I don't know, a surf film, Dane Reynolds, let's say, surfing Ventura on Marine Layer Productions back in the day. It's like, wow, those are similar to the waves that I surf, and he's surfing incredibly. And so there's an aspirational quality to that. But when it comes down to winning a world title, and you know, I want it to be I want there to be no relation to me doing what I'm doing. I want them to be the world's best athletes in the world's best waves, showcasing them making these tiny incremental adjustments, shaving off, you know, fractions of a second off the lap or whatever at cloud break. John versus Gabriel, completely unrelatable to me. That's what I want in that scenario.
Well, I think Paul brings up, something interesting, which is if we had the perfection all the time, would we lose our excitement about it? And I think it's something to chew on. Now,
Well, what's I think we're overlooking, or what he might be overlooking in that, is we even if the WSL is running professional surf contests in great waves, we're still exposed to non-perfect stuff in all other aspects of our surfing experience. So what we're witnessing from the WSL is 2% of maybe of our surf viewing experience. And that's where we want the perfection, is when it's the two best surfers fine-tuning their skill set in that moment. But then we turn that off and we pull up Instagram and we see everything else. And we go to the beach and we see everything else. So we know how to calibrate, you know, but when you get the best two surfers in the world, let's see them doing their best surfing.
and part of his argument, which I didn't bring up, was that, hey, shouldn't the best surfers in the world show us that they can surf in crappy waves? And of course, the answer is no, as you mentioned, because if they can't, first of all, it's not really a showcase of skill. And secondly, we are just assuming that they're great in shitty waves because they're great in 12-foot pipe.
I also don't care. Like, I don't
Yeah.
care how Lewis Hamilton drives a Honda Civic.
Whoa. Look at you.
You know,
Bringing it.
you know what I
F1.
mean? Yeah, you know
Yeah.
what I mean though? Like
Yeah, I do.
if he's fine-tuned it that much, that'd be like saying, get Thomas Keller, the great American chef, to replicate a McDonald's hamburger. You
That
know what I mean?
actually is kind of interesting.
It's a little interesting, but it's a complete waste of his talent and a
Yeah,
complete missing
yeah.
the art of what he's dedicated his life to. So again, I appreciate Paul and I do understand what he's saying because I've had that exact experience watching Dane Reynolds at Ventura and a million other versions of it. But and by the way, I still do want to like back in the day, I loved watching Taj Burrow on tour surfing great waves. And then I also love watching his edit surfing small beach breaks because he ripped that too. But in this scenario of what the WSL's efforts should be and what they should be setting their true north on, it should be perfect cloud break.
Yeah. Well, agreed. I thought it was an interesting concept and it was certainly worthy of discussion. So thank you, Paul from the UK. David, what else do you got for us?
Burleigh, the Burleigh event started last week.
Heck yes.
Couple of big stories coming out of Burleigh. They just ran basically 1 day of competition, I think, maybe 2 days of competition or a
Yeah,
day and a
two
half.
days.
Julian Wilson comes in as a wild card and freaking returns to form, dude. I mean, our question with Julian getting the wild card for the Challenger Series, I think you might have posed the question of, is he still kind of at his peak? And I'm like, well, his surf edits indicate that he has. Well, this shows that he's still at his competitive peak too. He was surfing incredibly well and left no questions unanswered, eliminated Jack Robinson, in fact, who just won Bells.
Well, what the real sort of litmus test with Julian is that he went to the elimination round. He lost in his opening heat and he had to go to the elimination. And when he lost, I was like, yeah. Now, granted, it was actually a tough heat. I think he lost with
Yeah.
14.07 points, and the other, it was Idolo and somebody else, and they both had like 15 and 16 points. It was a good heat. So it wasn't like he bogged and got two threes, but still, and then he went into the elimination round, got into the main event again, got into the opening round, or, you know,
Well,
and
crushed his elimination round by like going to the air, like doing as kind of technical, impressive airs as we've seen from anybody else on tour. So he's still at it. And by the way, he draws Italo in the next heat, the round of
I know.
32, and
And
his record against
go ahead.
Italo is flawless. I think he's 7-0 over Italo.
Now, Idolo looked great, obviously, if you saw any of the event. This is the heat of the event right now. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
putting money on Julian. I'm all about Julian on my fantasy team because everyone's probably going, he can't keep it up. He's already sort of proven himself. Yes, he belongs on tour. We can see that. So, and Elo, of course, wearing the gold jersey, #1 in the world right now. This is going to be an interesting heat. It might happen today, later this afternoon here in North America. The swell, the forecast is there's plenty of swell, but there's plenty of onshore wind.
Mm.
And the way Burleigh is, if there's enough of an easterly component to the wind, it's a problem. I think they need or excuse, it's either they need more south component or more east component, but there's really strong 20-mile-per-hour winds. And it might be able to be kind of hidden and tucked in there in that headland and be kind of sideshore and be okay. And we shall see. But it could be 8 feet in the next 3 days, but onshore perhaps or cross shore for sure.
Mm.
And we're going to have to wait and see. But there's plenty of swell, and they're going to have to run it. So we're going to see what happens.
Well, my pick for this event, my surf Ival pick was Griffin Colapinto. And Griffin Colapinto actually lost his first round heat and ended up in the elimination round, which had me quaking in my boots. And then he smoked. I forget who he was against, but he surfed an incredible heat in the elimination round. And he now draws Liam O'Brien in the round of 32, which I need him to make through.
That's a tough heat. Liam, of course, as you know, a Burleigh Heads local. So he's going to have a lot of people on the beach screaming for him. And I think if any heat really is going to sort of summarize Griffin's year on tour, it's this heat where he had a good result last time. He's got some momentum. He, as you say, got through the elimination round, but now he draws basically, I guess you'll say an informed Liam O'Brien. I saw Liam's heats. He surfed well. And we'll see what happens against this local hero who's going to have a lot of people on the beach screaming. That could work against Liam in some regard, but we shall see. Good heat coming up.
Definitely a good heat coming up. Yeah, I mean, Liam's no slouch in any condition.
Right.
I mean, he beat Julian Wilson in that heat with Italo with a 15.77 heat total. So yeah, he's no slouch at all. The other kind of storyline that's worth discussing for you and I is Joel Vaughn's non or Joel Vaughn running over Crosby Colapinto in the opening round and an interference not being called on Crosby Colapinto. Did you see this?
I did not see this.
So Joel Vaughn was on a wave. He needed a score, and Crosby was paddling out, and Crosby paddled straight into Joel's line. Joel did a turn, and as he's kind of coming down on the tail slide, ran over Crosby because Crosby didn't duck dive deep enough. Like Crosby was in that scenario when you're paddling out, you can actually choose to duck dive early and like basically duck dive the surfer and where the surfer is going to be. And you might then catch the impact of the wave on your head. But instead, Crosby was just going for a traditional duck dive the wave, but put himself in Joel's way. And so sure enough, Joel hit him and fell. And it looked clear as day, like an interference to me because Crosby paddled into his path and blocked him, you know? But the judges did not call an interference. Joel did not get the score. Joel ended up going to the elimination round and then lost to Griffin Colapinto in the elimination round. So an unfortunate circumstance for Joel, but strange call from the judges.
Yeah, I don't see how that could not be anything other than a interference.
It was clear as day. I have no idea what their rationale was. The reality was Joel wouldn't have gotten the score on that wave even if he landed that turn. So it really doesn't matter in the end, but it still matters moving forward, you know?
Hmm.
So
Interesting. Well, we shall
the
see. Oh, the other thing, hold on. Can we just take a quick break? I hear my dog. Do you hear him? No,
yeah, go for
seriously.
it. I
Seriously,
don't
my
hear
dog.
anything. No. I think Zoom cuts out those noises.
Welcome back. You know what? We've got bobcats, we've got coyotes. It's a wild, it's like a zoo in my backyard, basically.
Do you actually have bobcats?
Yeah, they're gnarly. They're gnarlier than coyotes.
Have you had any encounters with them?
Well, I bought these wildlife cams that I put up in the canyon in my backyard. And so we get pictures all the time of all these crazy creatures that walk up to our camera and look at it and
Wow.
skirt away. Yeah.
Do you have mountain lions?
I have never seen a mountain lion where we live, but they're certainly in this general vicinity
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, when Austin was pretty young, we real young, we'd like, we always go out and get coffee in the morning. And when he was real young, I wouldn't let him out of the house before me because, yeah, we'd see coyotes and stuff like that. And I'm like, can you imagine if I like let him wander out and then went back in to grab my sunglasses or something like that and a coyote snatched him? Even if he didn't get away with him, they're still going to cause damage, you know?
Yeah,
So I'd never
for
leave him
sure.
alone. But a
Yeah.
bobcat, then you really got to worry.
Yeah, bobcats, because they're gonna hide in the bushes. Like they're coyotes are just like kind of scavenging.
Yeah.
Bobcats have got a strategy. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah. It's a little sketchy.
Yeah.
Well, the other final thing I'll say about the Burleigh event of heats that you should look forward to is on the women's side, Caitlin Simmers
Exactly.
and Stephanie
Yes.
Gilmore.
Yes. What are your thoughts on this? This might actually be the most fascinating heat. I mean, there's some really good heats coming up. We've mentioned a couple, maybe three. This one, I, I mean, it's kind of like the clash of the young. It is the clash of the young versus the old, and I just wonder. I'm very fascinated by the mental state of both of these surfers. Like, is Caitlin Simmers in awe? Is 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 Stephanie Gilmore in awe of Caitlin Simmers?
Yes, both. And that's what makes it so great. You're right. It's the epitome of this clash that we love to see, which is old versus young. And so I really just hope they get the waves and they both bring their A game. I want to see eights and then nines and then somebody drops a 10, you know? So I'm
This is
excited for
like
that one.
Mike Tyson versus George Foreman.
Yeah.
So we'll see
Who's going to bite whose ear?
That was Tyson versus Evander Holyfield.
I think it's going to be Caitlin that goes for the bite.
That would mean DQ. You can't bite Stephanie Gilmore's ear.
No, I know. I'm just kidding. All right.
Come
Well,
on.
good. Looking forward to Burleigh. Scott, I've got a quick little song to play for you and a question to follow. Are you ready for it?
Yeah.
There you go. It's a shorter version, still not short enough.
That's funny. That is funny. It's a little bit embarrassing. I gotta say, I'm a little embarrassed.
It's
But
gold.
yeah.
DJ Seaweed, thank you. My Who Said That for you, Scott, this week is just it's not a multiple choice. It is simply who coined the phrase Eddie would go?
I'm gonna guess because of what the sad occurrence of Clyde Aikau's death that Clyde Aikau is the one that coined it.
Incorrect. Jack McCoy posted a video from it looked like maybe the early 90s, interviewing Mark Fu on the beach. And it was obviously on the beach of Waimea asking like, here's what the waves are doing. Should we run the event or not? And Mark Fu said, or I think Jack asked the question, what would Eddie say? And Mark's looking at the waves and he's like, Eddie would go. And
that's cool.
Is where the slogan came from.
Well, that's a great one. And that's super good. That's culturally hyper relevant.
Important to cement into the record books.
Yes.
But you mentioned it, man. Rest in peace. Clyde Aikau, graceful goofy footer from Haleiwa, Hawaii, winner of the 1986 Quicksilver in Memory of Eddie Aikau contest at Waimea Bay. Clyde Aikau began surfing in 1964 at the age of 15 in Waikiki, and before the year was out had become the Hawaiian Juniors Division champion. For years, he was somewhat overshadowed by his older brother Eddie, who made a spectacular debut at Waimea in 1966 and was known as the biggest or the finest big wave surfer of his generation. In 1967, Clyde later recalled, quote, I said to my brother, hey, Eddie, can you take me out there and show me how to surf the bay? We went out and he showed me exactly where to go and where not to go and what to watch for. Clyde and Eddie rode well at the North Shore breaks in 1971, and both made the finals of the Smirnoff Pro and the Duke Kahanamoku Classic. 2 years later, Clyde won the Duke, the first contest ever held at Waimea Bay. In 1977, Eddie also won the Duke. 3 months later, he was killed in a boating accident. Clyde and Hawaiian surfer Mark Fu were tied at the end of 1986 Quicksilver, at the end of the Quicksilver contest in 1986, but Aikau won on a wave score countback. Amazingly, Aikau hadn't surfed Waimea or any other North Shore break that entire winter season leading up to the contest. He continued to perform well in the Quicksilver event, placing 5th in 1990 and 10th in 2001. And then in 2002, Quicksilver, at the 2002 event, at 52 years old, he placed 8th. This is all from Matt Warshaw's Encyclopedia of Surfing. He doesn't include this here, but I know you and I watched him compete at the age of 61 just 5 years ago or something like that. So he was still surfing in the event almost up until the last two times it ran, I guess. So huge rest in peace to Clyde Aikau.
Rest in peace. And I want to say that first Quicksilver event at Waimea wasn't the first Eddie event. I think Denton Miyamura won it in the year before or 84 at Sunset Beach, but I'm not positive about that. Jamie actually might know.
Jamie, unmute yourself, buddy. Welcome to the show.
I believe it was Haleiwa was the first one.
Okay. Yeah. Was it Denton Miyamura?
I think so in 86. I think that's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
anyway,
any thoughts on Clyde?
Cemented in history right here. We have, we're correct.
I didn't know Clyde. I just remember that 2009 Eddie when I was that's the only one I've seen in person. And it was like the best Waimea I've ever seen. And I looked at him and he was like, his smile was just ear to ear. And he was like, it's so clean. It's so clean. Like, and I was like, then I knew it was good because I saw how excited he was. So
yeah.
Was that cool. Greg Long's win?
Yeah, that's when Greg Long won.
Yeah.
In the last heat.
Scott,
everybody thought Kelly won that day, and then Greg got a couple crazy ones at the end.
Pretty sure I was there. I was on the other side of the bay shooting in. Was that the year that Flea did the pin drop from way out So
No, I think that was the year, the not the year before, but the time before. I think that was when Bruce won that he did
that's
that.
the one I was at. I was at the one Bruce won. Yeah.
2004.
2004, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Scott, do you have any Clyde Aikau thoughts, or did you ever encounter him?
I mean, I don't really, to be honest with you, other than, I know what you guys know. Jamie knows way more about Clyde than I do. I just, rest in power, and it's a sad day for the surfing community, for sure, for the Aikau family.
Yeah. Well, we're going to do a deep dive with Jamie on the bonus show into Laird versus the World, the How Surfers Get Paid episode that's on Stab Magazine right now. But before we go out, I've got a couple of final thoughts. My must-see moment presented by Treeswax, the only petroleum-free surf wax, treeswax.com. Pulse Surf on Instagram posted Shane Beshen's perfect heat at Kira from back in the late 90s, I believe it was. Maybe 96, now that I'm thinking about it. But this was when the top three waves mattered. He got three tens and a 9.98 as well. That was a throwaway score. And it's incredible to watch.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Do
Must
you
see
remember,
moment
do you
presented by
remember that,
Treeswax.
Scott?
I don't remember. I don't remember that. The only thing I saw was when Kelly Slater back paddled him and eliminated him from a heat.
That was in Huntington.
Uh,
And I was on the beach for that, believe it or not.
I believe it.
I was in knee-high water at the age of probably 15 in Huntington, and I watched that happen. But the Kira footage I did then see shortly thereafter, and in a surf video or something. And what blew me away, I mean, it was all new to me back then, like I really didn't know what Kira was, but it was like Shane paddles in. It was really offshore and kind of lower tide, and Shane paddles into a wave that's knee-high. I'm just like, how does this become a 10-point ride? And then just kind of positions and the thing just grows. And it didn't become a huge wave, but even still, it did grow into like a shoulder high, just full drainer, and just gets 3 or 4 barrels that are all incredible barrels on their own, but links them all up and does that on 3 consecutive waves. So,
Well, speaking of knee high, I have pictures of you at that event, and you had those Huntington Beach knee high tube socks. You had a pit bull on a chain. You had your hat turned around like this, and you had probably a Monster Energy drink in your hand, and you were representing Huntington in all its glory.
you know me so well, Scott. Cameras didn't exist back then, actually. That's how old I am. Well, and then the final, did you have a Duke, or I'm sorry, a must-see moment?
Well, I mean, look, my must-see moment, quite frankly, is the brilliant work that Jamie and his crew at Stab put out, the How Surfers Get Paid, Laird Hamilton. It's incredible. I enjoyed it. It's my favorite one so far.
You really?
Yeah.
Bold.
Yeah.
Better and better each episode. Before we go, Surfrider supports our work, and they need your support. They just sent out a note that congressional leaders have introduced legislation to permanently ban new offshore oil and gas drilling off the East Coast, West Coast, Gulf Coast, and the Arctic Ocean. So they need you to tell Congress to sign this bill and let your voice be heard. So go to surfrider.org to get behind that fight, and then, of course, become a member at surfrider.org as well. Jamie, before we go to the bonus show, can you give listeners your resume? I don't even know how to sum up your work. What's your work history?
So I actually went to college with Matt Warshaw, which is kind of funny because I was like 18 and I think he was 30, 31. We were in the same class in my freshman year. So that was kind of my at Berkeley.
Did you obviously knew who he was, right?
Oh yeah. I was super stoked because I was a huge fan of Surfer and especially Matt's writing, especially his profiles. So
yeah,
I was pretty blown away. He was in the same class. And I did a lot of writing for surfing and Surfer a bit too. And then I worked for Quicksilver for 7 years, and that was kind of the peak of the surf industry. Did some contracting at WSL for a couple of years, but mainly have been freelance for the last dozen years or so, mostly doing film work to pay the bills, and then writing where I can, and I've been doing some more writing lately, which has been nice. So
awesome. Well, everybody join us on Patreon. We need your support over there to remain independent. And Scott and I have been operating for years without a raise. And so this is our attempt to keep up with the economy and costs of living. So join us on Patreon, and then you'll get incredible bonus content every week, including conversations with people like Jamie. So come on, get it.
Until next time, adios and aloha.